You're listening to the new Grandcarers SA podcast, a podcast series where we share information and insights with you and share ways to manage your caring role with ease. We understand that balancing a caring role can have challenges, and we hope our carer voice conversations provide useful information to you to ponder on. Your caring role is personal to you. Let's get the conversation started. Welcome to this episode of the Grandcarers SA podcast. We are talking meaningful intentions on this episode, and we have the pleasure in having Sue join us today, who will introduce herself shortly, and again, Karina, who's going to be asking some Q&A questions with Sue and looking in terms of the meaningful intentions and what the motivation is around there. But before we get started on the learning side of things, Sue, I would love it if you introduce yourself and how you're actually involved in the Grandcarers SA.
My name's Sue. I've been involved at the Hut Allgate Group for over 2 years now. I retired from my job working with children and families. I'm an early childhood consultant. I do a small amount of that currently, but looking for some meaning in my life and where I might be able to support community and having that knowledge behind me. I was approached by Kerry to join grandcarers, and it's been a lovely journey getting to know the people in the group and supporting them.
Yeah, and even with you saying that, that's giving you meaning and purpose by being involved
Absolutely.
in that, knowing it's a reciprocal feeling as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Karina, I know that we're going to talk about some questions in relation to feeling overwhelmed and stressed in terms of naturally everybody feels overwhelmed and
Mhm.
stressed. And in this particular episode, I wanted to really touch on the emotional well-being and what causes that stress within grandcarers. And so I'd really like your input later about how we can support each other to stay motivated. Because when we talk about meaning and purpose, but with intention, what comes up for me, and I'm not sure how you two feel, is motivation. How do we get to that end result? What motivates us? What drives us forward to then end up having that sense of feeling? It's giving me meaning. It's giving me purpose. I'm involved. We know that there's a social impact on caregiving generally across the globe, how people receive it, how would they feel affected by it in terms of relationships, being realistic. We know that it does change, especially with our grandcarers, where they may be starting to plan the trip around Australia, and then suddenly, even with the love of the child, their life takes a slight pivot. Sometimes not for long because it becomes part of who they are, as you would, I'm sure, ditto that, Sue. So in terms of the role of a grandcarer, it's really about maintaining that feeling, the acceptance, the acknowledgement, which I've talked about previously, around what it is and what it brings to our lives. And I would love it if anyone that's listening to this particular episode can just pause and think about some of those things that give them meaning now, what gave them meaning in the past, and how they can baggage all of that up together and take it with them into the future, never dismissing what their role is as a grand carer. So those are the key things I wanted to really sort of integrate in today in terms of that emotional well-being, that social impact of feeling that relationships and our community, our sense of community may differ to maybe a friend who's not caring. And I would love it if we went straight into the questions because I know that there's some really juicy information that's going to come out of this episode. So
Yeah.
I am going to hand the floor over to Karina. And thank you, Sue, for being here again today.
Yes. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sadie, for that wonderful introduction about meaningful intention. So, we do have some questions here which could hopefully, shed light to our grandcarers. So the first one, when grandcarers start feeling overwhelmed, what do you think could help them feel motivated again? In what ways could the village support program give them that kind of support?
I think the village is a great start. We have recently had a new family join us, and it's really important to create a welcoming, respectful, inclusive environment for the grandcarers and to create that safe space so that they feel their voice is being heard, they're not being judged, they're very overwhelmed. There's a whole lot of information they now need to learn about that perhaps they had past, having reared children before and now they're grandparents. So there's a lot of mental health, well-being. There's a lot of things about digital literacies, adolescents' behaviour, finances. But I think the group, in terms of being heard by each other and giving that support, doesn't necessarily settle their feelings of being overwhelmed, but hearing other stories that are like, even though there's a lot of trauma around that, by the end of our sessions together, everybody's joking and laughing and we're sharing humour. So I think that's part of the process of what a village does. Obviously, it's important to guide meaningful conversations as well, and we provide support to each other in terms of resources. Grandcarers is a brilliant resource because they can, from time to time, give legal advice. They have wellbeing days for the grandcarers. This year, there's been a number of workshops that have been put on by professionals around, working with tweens, adolescent behaviour. Where do you sit in all of this? And that has helped to settle some of that overwhelming new life they've got when they're looking at how to manage the grief and loss of a life they thought they would have.
I think that's pretty spot on in terms of the storytelling that comes with people sharing in that safe space. You talked about respect and safe space, and I just made a note here in terms of very much the capacity that somebody has when they walk through the door versus the capacity that they have when they've left. It may be a guest speaker, it may be the gold nugget that comes up from one of the professionals that comes in without making them feel that they are in a room being lectured at on how to now believe they are, or who are they, what are they going to become. And I feel, Sue, that what you shared with us before is that really that sense of safety as well as connection in the room with the villages. Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
vital.
it is
yeah,
vital. Makes you
yeah.
stop and think, doesn't it?
And it can get like the grandcarers would have that sense of belongingness.
Yes,
Yeah, and they're not, alone in this world. You just share the stories with other grandcarers as well, and what could, just sharing advices.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The next question, Karina, is
right.
around those social gatherings and bringing family and friends into our world as
Yeah,
carers.
yeah.
And, those are extra responsibilities.
Yeah, and in connection to that, Sue, like, so as a village facilitator, you've heard maybe a lot of different stories from our grandcarers. So how do you support grandcarers who may, miss social gatherings, especially in time of this year in December? So right now it's December. There's lots of social gatherings with friends and family. So how do you support our grandcarers who may miss social gatherings with friends and family due to their additional responsibilities? And yeah, how do you help them communicate this to others so that they would feel understood?
This year we've been bringing a shared morning tea.
Yes.
So everybody brings some food to share so that it becomes a social event as well as the village meeting. This group have been together for some time and they have been on a journey together. So they're very supportive of each other. And when there are new participants that come in and out, or clients that come in and out, they're very embracing. They've had that journey. They understand now that friends may not want to hear their stories because they're at a different point in their lives. They're travelling Australia or they're able to play golf every Wednesday and Friday, and that's not the sorts of things that this particular group are able to do. A social thing that's occurred within the group is they will meet in between our meetings. So we've enabled that social connectedness with each other. They've found their tribe now. So whilst they've lost friends and friendship groups, they found a new tribe to come together with new friendship groups, and they will meet in between specific village meetings, which is fantastic. Christmas raises and the festive season raises a whole lot of stress and trauma for many with past feelings. It's a very hard financial time. And the fantastic initiative from Grandcarers SA of giving the Christmas gifts has been a highlight for the Christmas season, that they haven't had to worry so much about that finance around gifts for children. So that's an absolute joy that grandcarers provide for the group. They have really enjoyed being able to attend the police band, which was a morning tea that grandcarers put on for them as a wider group, not just one village, but all of the village. And there was such a lot of positive feedback about coming together and actually leaving everything behind and just focusing on that experience. They enjoyed the music, the food, the company, and having a time of joy. So for them, that was a lovely social gathering around this time. They all use different strategies for themselves because they're in the hills. A lot of them will use nature as a way to have some meaning, to take some time out during the day. But I think coming back to that point that they found their tribe, that's been incredibly helpful for them with friendships.
It's that sense of village, literally.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
When we
yes,
find our people, when we feel that connection of them. And when you mention that, Sue, I know a friend of mine who's caring for their partner, and they've definitely realized that within the last 2 years, their partner has shifted into another phase, let's call it, and that friends are finding it very difficult to not see the person they used to see, not unable to communicate in the way that they used to with some jest, humor, and banter. And
yes,
certainly has made a ripple effect. And when you find people that it's more than understanding, isn't it? It's more than storytelling. It's about sometimes leaving it on the door frame, walking through, being like at this Christmas event that has been held recently, and just allowing that time and space to unfold with other people. Mm.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned too about when you lose some, you gain some.
yes.
And yeah, it's very important, especially the villages that our grandcarers feel supported and that social belongingness as well. Just really nice.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Sue. Well, that's the second, and now for the last question that we have. So, what motivates you, Sue? What motivates you to do this work, and how has supporting grandcarers become meaningful in your life?
I think what motivates me to do this work is that they are a group that are not necessarily known about in our community and society, that they are a group of people that are reparenting. They finished their parenting, they thought they'd be grandparents, but really what they're doing is reparenting. And I think through the village network and meeting the group and spending time with them, we've been on a journey together through the storytelling, through ups and downs, difficulties, challenges. But at the end of the day, they have really embraced me being there as well. And that's what brings me meaning. I enjoy seeing them every month. I'm happy to research resources for them. I can support people with, in areas of early childhood. We connect back to grandcarers if we need to in terms of, support around finances or what have you. But for me, it is a positive experience even though they sit in that particular space. I think it's really important that the rest of the community know about grandcarers and the brilliant job that they're doing.
Yeah. And like you say, it's very much around normalizing their
Yes,
experiences, and making it not 9 to 5 or it's at the weekend. It just suddenly stops. And we've mentioned it previously in another episode. It's more than a full-time job.
absolutely.
Yeah, your deer's in the spotlight all the time in terms of knowing that when there's calm and ease, sometimes with any human being, there are things that are going to trigger. They're going to bring up memories. They're going to be of what we had, but what do we have now? Yeah, and normalizing that whole process. And I think that's a lovely way in terms of being able to share how Grandcarers SA can be part of their life and not all of their life. I don't know how you feel, Sue, in terms of organisations. We know they're there. We know Alzheimer's SA is there. We know Carers SA is there. We know it Catalyst Foundation, which used to be the Seniors Information Service, is there for mature adults. And we know that the resource is there. But what I'm hearing is that you're able to decipher all of that and what I call redigest and deliver to people who haven't always got the motivation to sit and read, and even fact sheets. Sometimes they're so easy read in inverted commas that they're missing the nuggets that are going to lead them to want to find out more. And I believe things need to sometimes be on a one pager. But I think when it comes to information with carers or any, I don't really like to use the word vulnerable group, but I think we could place that in that. We've got some vulnerability rather than being vulnerable. Vulnerable has that connotation around people aren't coping. And I'd love to ask you around that coping. Are there any coping strategies that any of the grandcarers that come to your village have been able to share with others instead of, well, if I was you,
Mm.
I would do this. Have you heard any of those really rich stories where they've been able to share their ways to manage and cope?
I think there's a number of things in there, Sadie, because they're in the hills, they're close to botanical gardens, they're close to nature. They have a few gardens that they've walked through. They have talked with each other about the different strategies they may use either on the beach for a
Yeah,
walk, up in the botanical gardens for a walk. Some use cooking. So there's been a sharing of, that recipe and supporting each other around, that social connect. There's book sharing. They'll bring books to share with each other. There's, the strategies around just scream, let it out.
absolutely.
And of course, around trying to see a positive side, the humour in things. So there are quite a few of the strategies I think they've used those intentional strategies as well as, thinking about what happens in the day.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And about following the bouncing ball of emotions and what comes up, knowing that I remember as a child when you used to sit on that bouncy thing with ears. I sometimes see that life is like that. You're bouncing around and then suddenly you've got to bounce in the other direction and building up that really resilience and sense of well-being, but very much more around filling your cup a plenty rather than overfilling it with too much and just getting that fine line. And I think also what you're saying is that when they come to doing that intentional versus the unintentional, is that what is floating someone's boat in terms of calming, because that is one of the reasons why we put this podcast episode together, and the series of the others, is to really share those lived experiences, sharing some really simple ideas in a space of a few episodes. It's not about giving more and giving that fine-tooth comb research, or there's a lot of evidence around the research in terms of carer resilience. And we could talk a whole episode on that. But what's more tangible is when you hear someone's words and that sharing, like you've done today, where people can take that away and build their own resilience and have their own autonomy on what works for them, knowing that by the sounds of it, they can walk in that room and just burst into tears or scream without any judgment, which is
Absolutely.
exactly why the villages were set up, weren't they?
Yes.
If somebody was wanting to look at coming to a village and they're listening to this because they may not be linked with Grandcarers SA already and they've sort of been on the sidelines, they've been peripherally looking in, what would you say to them?
Please join us. You're very welcome. We
Yeah.
embrace new people into the group. You will be valued.
Value, wonderful. And it's linking with someone's values,
Yes.
isn't it? Valuing connection, time with friends. You were mentioning before that people's world really can shrink, but it can also be the start of new growth because their familiarity shrinks, and friends may, like a train journey, I've been told before, come on and off, and
Yes.
some will stay for the whole journey. And even though the world may be feeling it's shrinking, it's about us being able to support our carers to let that grow again. Planting the seed and just knowing that resilience comes from within, and we do have accountability on building it ourselves, because if we're building it based on somebody else's sense of be strong, it's all fine, tomorrow's a new day, this will pass, all of those wonderful things that are said with warmth can sometimes also make somebody feel, and I've heard it over the years, where they feel that, oh, now I need to do something. And then they're in a hurry to do it and a hurry to change their routine, when it comes back to what they value and what that core value is of knowing that their own health and well-being is as important as anyone else in that room as the village grows, and I'm sure sees people come and go and maybe stay for the long. Who have you got that's there, who's been there the longest?
Oh, I think most of the group has been incredibly static and supportive. So over the 2 years I've been there, we've all been together. We've had, as I said, perhaps a new family to come and join soon, but they're very welcoming. They themselves have put up flyers in community centres and GP practices and health hubs to encourage other people to come. So it's a very well established, incredibly respectful, and they build rapport with each other and understanding, which is great. Yes.
Yeah, and you touched on it, Karina, that we are recording this in December and we're pre-Christmas, where festivities are happening, and it is sometimes a raw reality for those who unfortunately don't maybe have family in Australia, and or family at all. There's a lot of residents that even live within the suburbs of Adelaide that I've worked with over the past, who they have themselves, and they go to churches. They actively go and find other places to meet during that time. And they may not even go to church throughout the year, but they equally, again, go there knowing that they're going to have a feed, they're going to be with people at this time of year. And there's a lot of other community groups that do a lot of different things at this time of the year so that people aren't feeling as lonely. It does sometimes take a little bit of research to find out what's going to work for us individually. But it's certainly a time where people can feel that sense of isolation. And It can be tricky. And I think, with that said, when we look at meaningful intentions, we see it as also an opportunity to look at what we're going to be doing slightly differently in our life, isn't it, Karina?
Yeah. And
Mm.
I just want to add as well that Grandcarers as a website has a lot of information, useful information for grandcarers. There is fact sheets about how to like build resilience for the kids, or just any information that would help with the grandcarers, and also with the villages. I'd like to add that we have various of locations
Mm.
across Adelaide. We have in Gawler, we have in Somerton Park, we have some of the regional places here as well. And all of the schedules are in our Grand Carriers website, which is in the events and villages website and villages calendar. So yeah,
There's a lot on offer.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that brings us to the end of this episode. It was full of information, and what I've personally taken away from it is that meaning, intentions, life in general, how we bounce off others to fill our cup,
Mhm.
really feels like it's coming through with the villages and the concept around even the name. Coming from a village in the UK myself, I know village feels safe. There's boundaries around. As village kids, we knew we would only be found at someone else's house, and off our parents would go. There was this sense of tribe, like you said before, Sue. There was this sense of everybody looked out for each other. And the village concept is certainly that feels a warm place to be.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a connection. We know in our world around meaning and connection and social connectedness, from a health professional side of things, but in terms of a general conversation over a cup of tea and biscuits, I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything better than that. So before we finish, is there anything else that you'd like to just mention to any newbies that might come through the door, Sue or Karina? I know that you've spent some time in the villages, so would either of you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Um, so you go, Sue, sorry.
I think it's really important that the wider community knows about grandcarers and where the
Mm.
community villages are, and the village that wraps around support for these families, and everybody is very welcome.
Wonderful. Karina, on that note, what we could do, because these episodes will be in a few different places,
Yeah.
is there an opportunity on the Grandcarers website to send a message to grandcarers, like Sue said, and just ask for where maybe their local meetings are and
Ah,
villages are?
yes. We do have a calendar in our website about the villages, and I believe that we send out text messages
Yeah.
to our grandcarers about updates and also reminders about the villages.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that the villages grow and grow and grow without becoming a city of too many. I think there's sometimes an opportunity where there's other events throughout the year that grandcarers come together, like the recent one with the Saypol band, and the villages having that really the strength and resilience within itself. So thank you so very much for both of you, for being in this podcast today. Thank you very much indeed for being part of it. Take
Thank
care for
you.
now.